Welcome to this course. First off, we'll be talking about some basic concepts of armed warfare, how armor is used on higher levels, because armor is rarely used, or of course it's often used in platoon settings, but when you use armor, you're most likely trying to gain some sort of advantage. And I'm going to talk a little about how you can gain advantage using armor. Gonna go over the vehicles, the difference between wheeled armor and tracked armor, some of their strengths and weaknesses, and their armaments, etc. Then we're going to go over some communications between the crewmen inside. How the commander and gunner and driver should talk to each other in order to gain effective communication, thereby working faster, thereby killing enemies. I'll then also go into platoon level tactics, or what's also called troop level tactics. Wesley pokes me. And on that note, we'll also, when we're working in troop level tactics, we'll also work over how an armor section work. And what you will also quickly find out is that armor doctrine and helicopter doctrine are almost exactly alike. So, so when armors work together, they also work in pairs, just like a helicopter works with a wingman. And anything should almost always be done as a section, so you always move two tanks at the same time. Okay. Do we have anyone in here that still needs to connect?
Yeah, I'm coming in now.
Yeah, I'm connecting too.
Where do you want me to slot, Godan?
Just take one top slots in the squad.
You just wait for to find a pair now.
Sorry for the late interruption.
No worries, I was just introducing the course.
Well, I thought I'd just hop in and join the course because the mission got boring anyway.
It's KMO's fault.
It's all my fault. Anyway, you were around when I stalled AM2. Did you record that by any chance?
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
Oh, such a shame.
I should have done. It was quite funny, you just sort of dropped off the end of the cliff.
I was almost pissing my pants there.
Hey, what the fuck, Google Docs? I hate you. Okay, please advise me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Yes, there we go. Jan, you said too?
Yeah, I'm just loading now.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and start. So once again, welcome to this first course of mine. I haven't tried this approach to teaching this stuff before. And in real life, this is one of my weaker points because I have not been in an armored unit myself. I have done mechanized, which is basically the same, but I've not worked in a tank unit before. I've talked to a lot of tank guys in order to make this happen, and I read a lot of fucking field manuals to understand these doctrines. So if there's any guys in here with prior service in any Panzer unit or whatever the British calls their armor, then go ahead and correct me. But otherwise, this should be pretty solid. Okay. So basic concepts of armored warfare. We in military we distinguish two levels. We distinguish tactic and strategic. And tactic is low-level decisions. That is what we deal with usually in armor. And strategic level is way above our pay grade in basic armor level. But strategic is where we get our missions from. So essentially, a strategic objective could be the fight for Chernarus as a whole. That would be a strategic fight. We'd have to identify which points do we need to control in order to win this war. And then we'd get tactical assignments to complete this strategy. So when you use armor in a strategic sense, when you give armor assignments, you seek to gain something specific. And armor is a shock force in a modern warfare. On these grand scales, armor is used to gain initiative from the enemy. So that means we're denying the enemy his initiative by doing something so fast that he can respond to it before it's too late. And we're usually doing that by amassing a large amount of firepower with a very high maneuverability, also known as tanks, in a small area, usually used to achieve a breakthrough in enemy lines, destroy rear echelon units like fly units, forward airports, recovery units, etc. Enemy reserve units for that matter. This means that whenever you use armor, you want to think of it as a high pace operating tempo. Unless you're working with infantry, armor is a fast moving sort of unit. Everything should be fast working with armor. A firefight would rarely last more than a few minutes, and normally much less. And therefore, you have little time to screw around with comms, both inside the tank and between tanks. This is just a quick note for you guys. This is fucking fast. This is probably one of the most brutal kinds of warfare there is out there. And so if you want to win in this game, you really want to be good at short, concise communication and doing exactly what you're told, and commanders working together to achieve their objectives. Otherwise, you could easily get fucked up by this. So first off, you need to know your vehicles, and especially the strengths and weaknesses of the armor that you're crewing, but also the enemy armor, the armor you're facing. We again differentiate between two types of armor. We have wheeled armor and we have tracked armor. Wheeled armor is mostly used either in mechanized infantry as troop carriers and gun platforms, or as recon units moving ahead of a larger armor force. They can even be used as regular armored units fighting similar vehicles. This is not a typical way of engaging. You can use what's called infantry fighting vehicles to fight other infantry fighting vehicles, such as Bradley's fighting BMPs, but it's a rare application because, well, they could be used for so much more since they have personnel carrying ability. Strength of a wheeled vehicle, of course, is its speed. These units should always aim to use speed to their advantage and maneuver around enemy, try to outflank him and hit his rear armor. And the reason you want to outflank an enemy in this case is because an armor unit has a very small field of fire, and he has a very small field of sight. Essentially, an armor unit can, if they can cover their sectors correctly, they can be fucking blind. You can literally drive around a tank and be lucky enough that it doesn't notice you if the commander doesn't do his job and the gunner doesn't do his job. So if you utilize your speed against, say, a tank in a wheeled unit, then you can easily gain an advantage to actually be able to kill a main battle tank if you're quick. Also, if you are engaged with an armored unit and using tracked vehicles and using these outflanking maneuvers, you force him to use a larger field of fire, essentially making him unable to maintain situational awareness, since he knows, okay, I have fucking vehicles on my 9 o'clock and my 3 o'clock, my 12 o'clock. Okay, I found some on my 9 o'clock, but what the fuck's going on at 3 o'clock? We have no clue, because we literally can't see a thing from inside this big ass box we're driving around in. That's your advantage in a wheeled vehicle. Second strength you get in a wheeled vehicle is usually infantry support. If you carry infantry, you have a distinct advantage of being able to deploy the said infantry and have them set up ambushes or have them scout out enemy units before committing your vehicle to the fight. Infantry can be used as distracting force while you maneuver your armor. So when you do mechanized warfare, you usually want to think of your infantry as expendables. They are fucking pawns for you to use the armor effectively against the enemy. They themselves can do some damage using anti-tank guided missiles, RPGs, or whatever. But essentially, they are a small part of the puzzle that is the mechanized warfare, where you want to use the vehicles to kill other vehicles. You also obviously have weaknesses in wheeled vehicles, especially considering light armor. A wheeled vehicle will naturally have less armor, since the wheels have limited weight capacity. And most wheeled vehicles can be defeated by even just 7.62 millimeter machine guns, engaging their wheels and thereby doing what's called a mobility kill. There are several different kinds of kills you can do on enemy armor. I can't remember them all in English. But a mobility kill is essentially taking out his ability to move, and an armored vehicle that can move is essentially useless, since it's vulnerable. It still has a limited field of view, and you can easily maneuver around it and hit it from close or just from a direction where the armor is weak.
Can I add a quick side note?
Yeah.
Guys, what do you think it takes to defeat a LAV 25's armor? Oh shit,
50 cal.
Yeah, you're wrong. You can shoot through a fucking LAV with an AK-47. That's the thing. LAVs are like doom buggies. They're extremely fast, but yeah, your armor is complete shit. People might overestimate them, thinking, yeah, they can't take a 50 cal, but they can take a small arms. No. Small arms at the right angle goes straight to their armor.
Yeah. As my practical example was BRDM2s. Did this once in a multiplayer session where I was a machine gunner, and these BRDM2s came rolling up. I just started laying point fire on the turret, essentially killing the commander, and then the driver was just like, dude, where am I supposed to go? Fuck. And then I just shot at the driver hatch and he died as well. So you can easily kill a crew of a wheeled armored vehicle just using 7.62 weapons. Okay. Second problem with the wheeled vehicle is that you usually end up with a light armament. You can since you have wheels, you can't carry as much gear, and therefore you have lighter weapons. You will usually carry less than a 30mm cannon, and will rely on ATGMs and infantry to defeat the heavier armor. There are a few wheeled vehicles that carry a heavy armament, like the 105mm striker, but it's rarely used and has a small practical application, because it's essentially just a blind tank. The commander can't really see a thing, and neither can the gunner. Bottom line, these vehicles are fast and mostly bring infantry units to the fight, therefore they are dangerous as long as they can maintain momentum. You can kill their mobility by taking out the wheels. They are vulnerable and easily outmaneuvered. Any questions on real combat? I was considering spawning to wheeled vehicles and have you fuck around with them, but I'm certain that you're all familiar with them.
Pretty much.
Ace model the crew positions realistically, so if you shoot through the armor, to the crew positions, will it kill them?
Yes. I know even the old BI models did that, so I'm pretty certain Ace had that feature too.
Yeah, remember, even if you have an Barrett M107 with the Raufoss ammo, you can take something like a BTR out with 1 bullet to the engine, as long as you hit it right. Because that's how realistically it's modeled.
Okay, moving on. Tracked armor. Tracked armor has some obvious strengths that you know. It has terrain capability. Tracked vehicles have the advantage of off-road, and in general, if a tracked vehicle can pass through an area, there's nothing that really can. These tracks allow for extremely tight turns, and therefore they are hard to outflank, and also with a reverse speed almost as great as forward speed. This is a great advantage. You get a vehicle that can do practically anything you want with it. Also, the armor, since the tracks allow for more weight while maintaining speed and integrity, you get a vehicle that is tough and can feature composite layered armor, and this makes vehicles hard to engage by only the means of firepower you normally would rely on. You need to use maneuver to outflank tracked armor vehicles and destroy them, and you need to close with them in order to engage rear armor. You can't just a heavier tracked vehicle wouldn't be an easy target on distance even with a ATGM, because the armor can actually be so thick that even a javelin can have trouble penetrating it. Okay, armament also. The tracks also allow for heavier weapons to be deployed, and almost only the imagination that limits armament. In World War II, they even used 400mm mortars onto a tank chassis and fired from them. The Germans did that, and normally an armored vehicle can carry an armament between 30mm and 125mm main cannon. This makes them tough adversaries and greatly improves their range and anti-armor capability. So essentially, you have modern armor like the Abrams, the Leopard, and the T-90. They can effectively destroy a tank at about 3 kilometers or greater distances, depending on the situation. These are dangerous motherfuckers, and their happy hunting ground is off-road in the open terrain. Weaknesses. Their speed. Even though they're good off-road, they will tracks rarely allow travel above 70 kilometers an hour, and in game obviously less. And an off-road setting, you would usually not be able to get more than 40 kilometers an hour. So you're exposed to motorized and light armor units who will utilize their speed to outmaneuver you, or infantry lying in ambush can also be a pain in the ass for you. The tracks also add to noise, depending on how high you have your effect settings. That differs. But in real life, most tracked vehicles are very easy to hear, and in certain conditions you can easily hear them more than a kilometer away. And this is a serious drawback if you're fighting infantry, who will be sneaking around in the forest and easily be able to hear you coming. So therefore, they'll quickly be ready to either evade you, hide, or set up an ambush on you. So that's a consideration you want to take into account, because sure, you can move through a forest without being seen, but they will be able to hear you. A small weakness not so applicable in armor is logistics as well. You're vulnerable without a strong logistic unit, since you're depending on heavy ammunition and much fuel to move, and you depend on heavy logistics for spare parts and recovery vehicles as well, because you can't just, as you can with a striker, just go ahead and change the tire. You fucking need extra support units just to replace the track sometimes. Bottom line, tracked vehicles are the kings of off-road battlefield, as long as they have momentum and the option of fighting on long ranges. But in closed environments and faced with fast, mobile missile-armed troops, they're exposed and should always fight alongside infantry units. Any questions on tracked armor?
Nope.
Okay, gonna go over internal communications in the vehicle. As I talked about before, this is a fast-paced way of communicating. This is a fast-paced way of fighting, and therefore you must have streamlined and fast communications. And armor sections and platoons should use generalized terms when fighting, and the comms inside the vehicle are very rigid. So, comms inside the vehicle, you should maintain a minimal amount of talk, and almost only contain key information when fighting. In game problems very often drivers and gunners having heard that, yeah. Sometimes you usually get told on the server that you need to take initiative. In armor, as a crewman, that's not always the case, and rarely is actually. Because in a tank, as a gunner or a driver, you have so little situational awareness. You literally have those 50 or 20 degrees of field of view, and your sector's cover. You don't really know what's going on beyond that. You might have vehicle racks if those are ever reintroduced, so you might know what's going on platoon or company net, but you don't really know, and therefore there's nothing more annoying to a commander than being told all the time, hey, we should do this, hey, let's do that. Just so whenever you're crewing a vehicle, unless you are giving something new information to the commander, like, hey, there's armor over there, or fuck, 2-1 has just been hit, then don't talk to him, because he should be pretty busy communicating with other tanks. In general, you as a crew shouldn't do anything without orders from your commander, because a driver, as I said, you have very little situational awareness, and you shouldn't argue with your commander. And that's because of the simple fact you don't really have a clue what's going on outside of your line of sight, other than what your commander told you, basically. Notice it can seem weird, and you can easily end up thinking, nah, this commander's a douche, we're gonna get shot if we're gonna do this. But basic warfare, you actually have to just accept the commander's in charge, and you have to just do what he says, and hope that he understands platoon commander's intention. Drop the gunner optics, what do you mean? Real life, yeah, of course. Game, no.
In the game, most that you could do is use smoke grenades, white phosphorus rounds, or anything else to create a smoke screen around the vehicle, or maybe shoot at the periscope, which will be very annoying to the tank gunner, but can't do much more.
Real life, at least on the Leopard 2, the Danish edition, we have hunter killer computers on the vehicles. There's essentially a little black box standing on top of the vehicle, and that's the commander's eyes. And it's also the computer that he uses to assign targets to the gunner. You usually want to take that out pretty quickly, and then secondary start hitting the gunner periscope to blind him as well. But that's just a real life thing. Okay. So on top of that, as a crew, you shouldn't have to talk unless you provide new information. Then the commander as well needs to be very brief in his communication.